to the Life Reinvention Summit. This is Dr. Kathryn Bingham with guest LJ Finney, founder of In18, talking about strategic networking. So LJ, I am so glad to have you here with us today. I was so excited when Shel Shapiro shared your information because networking is just such a key component to having women especially know how to accelerate their career, get in on visibility, have the ability to negotiate deals. It begins and ends, it sometimes right with the networking piece. So I'm going to tell people a little bit about you. This is what struck me about all of the things that I found in your About PDF, which, by the way, folks, if you're watching this, you can download that right from the screen that you're viewing this video on. But you talk about being passionate and focused and purposeful, and that networking transformed your career and positively impact your life and still allowed you to be genuine. And so I want to come back to that in one of my questions. But what I loved is you talk about being a project manager and a senior business analyst for companies like Goldman Sachs and Barclays and Apollo Global Management. But you use this one phrase, and this is the critical piece for me, is project managers do not really have authority, we use influence. And this issue of influence without authority, I think, is critical for women in their careers. So with that, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Kathryn. I appreciate you having me here. It is an exciting time for me because I really think that we're undervaluing the opportunity to network, and people tend to look at it like it's this dirty thing that they have to do and they're forced to do. But anytime we're speaking to someone, we're actually networking. We're looking for ways to really get to know that person. And we do it from a place of authenticity and genuinely looking at the person as another human being that you want to know. It can be very useful and beneficial, one, for your personal enrichment, but two, for your career advancement as well.
Awesome. So why is networking uncomfortable for so many people?
I mean, we do what's comfortable for us generally, and I'm going to say there are some people that are introverts and extroverts, but in my case, I've observed that talking to strangers is something we've been taught not to do, and there are many scenarios where we feel forced to do that type of work, and that's not what we want to do. Hold on one second. So some people are introverts and others are extroverts, but historically we've been taught that talking to strangers is not an acceptable social behavior. And in networking and being able to kind of present yourself, it's really an opportunity for you to get to know someone's life story. And people like to talk about themselves generally. In this moment, it's really about, wow, how can I help this other person? And how can I learn more about what they're doing? Because we can be very useful to others. And in turn, I feel like it's a pay it forward model where you can really learn about people when you're open to giving versus taking.
And you talk about authenticity a bit. How is it that we can be strategic about our networking and be authentic and not come off with that salesy vibe?
Oh, it's such a great question. First, no offense to the salespeople. It feels like a dirty word sometimes, especially authenticity and sales don't seem to go in the same sentence. But when I think about authenticity for me, and I think about it for other people that I've advised, the real question is, well, who are you and what would you like to know? And when we look at it from a very general perspective, I'm looking at things like, who am I and what do I need to know and what do I want to know about a person, and being very intentional about that, but not being like aggressively pushy. And I think that that's where the salesy part comes in. You're not listening to the person. You just keep trying to push something versus just receiving the information. I genuinely want to know things about you. Where did you grow up? What are your interests? What are your favorite foods? Do you have children? Do you have pets? And when you ask these questions, you learn a lot about a person and you can learn how to be helpful. And I think it's when you put your personal goals to the side and make it a secondary conversation or a tertiary, wherever you put it. The real question is, who is that person in front of me and what can I learn about them? I think that answered the part of the question.
You did. You did a great job. So, how can people become more intentional around networking?
This is a good question. I think anytime you're entering a room, think about, how do I want to show up? What do I want to share about myself? And also looking at the perspective of, what can I learn about other people in this particular space? So, perfect example, if you're invited to a networking event, and quite honestly, anywhere you go where there's more than one person besides yourself is probably an opportunity to network and get to know people. And let's not call it networking. Let's call it something else. You can call it, how do I have a getting to know you moment? Because that person could be your next business partner, your next best friend, or your next referral. Maybe you're referring other business to them. And when you're stepping into a space, thinking about, who am I and what do I want to use this time and moment for? Because our time is very valuable. And if you look at how you're spending your time, why would you spend your time doing something that you deplore or that you don't like or enjoy? So how do you make the best of that moment? And there's nothing lost in getting to know people and understanding their life stories, because if we really think about it, Instagram and Facebook and all of these things are just so popular because people want to share their stories and share what's happening in their lives. And so we really, if you start to look at what are some of the social challenges, we don't really have an outlet. So now we're pushing and oversharing information. But if you ask someone their genuine interest and you really are interested, you can learn a lot about a person. And one of the things I've started to recognize and share is, be interested. I think that people ask great questions, but then they're not listening. They're multitasking. Right. They're on their phone, or they're looking at the next person they want to talk to and try to meet in the room. And it's really not that. I think that that's another thing. Don't search out for people to talk to. Think about it. Just genuinely connect with people as you move through the room. It's helpful, and people, they receive it, and they will acknowledge, and they will also be able to accept that that's really what's occurring. When I am genuinely interested and I'm actively listening, I am repeating back things that they told me, one, so that I can remember it and I'm actually listening. But then two, because it helps to make that person feel more comfortable speaking to you. And then don't get in your head and start thinking about all the things you can do for that person right in that moment, but really genuinely slow down and slow yourself down and listen.
And I think you've touched on something. I do it maybe a little bit differently, but for example, if you're going to a conference, there are people who are card collectors, right? They go to a conference, there's, whether it's 300 people or 10,000 people, and they're like out to meet everyone. And I think that we can really instead, in advance, strategically think, I'd really like to meet these two speakers. If I meet just these two speakers, that will be really valuable. But then what we have to do is, yes, we have to make that intentional connection, but we have to use the methods that you're talking about around being focused on the person, building a relationship, not trying to force an agenda to get to this point that you'd love to make with this person. What you want to do is build the connection in a way that you can come back and follow up with them. If you never get to that one piece of conversation that you would just love to have with that speaker, that's okay if you've built a connection. But if the first thing you lead with is, I need this, then we miss that whole opportunity. We make people feel used, right? We don't build relationships.
Absolutely.
And so I think, if I walk away with 2 or 3 really sound relationships or connections from a conference, I've been to conferences with 10,000 people. You don't meet them all. But let's say I meet 500 people. That's a stretch, but let's just say I do. I am never going to necessarily have a good ongoing business relationship or personal relationship with 500 people from that conference, but I can intentionally connect with 3 or 4, or if it's only 2, I will have walked away with something valuable. Do you see people coming at it from that other strategy?
Well, I think so. The strategy that you're mentioning is the approach that I recommend people employ. Be very intentional about how you connect with the individuals and be realistic in what you can support. Because if you collect 500 cards, what are you going to do with all 500 cards? Are you going to, I mean, a lot of people add cards to, they use this technology, the CRM software. They add all of their cards into a system, and then they start spamming people. I mean, not spamming, but advertising.
I totally get it. It is a form. It's a kinder, gentler form of spam, but it's still spam.
It is. It really is. And just because we exchange cards does not mean I'm opting in, but some people treat it as such. When I go to an event, I also look at who's going to be in the room, but I don't think I have historically targeted individuals. There are people I want to meet, but I also know that everyone wants to meet them as well. And I feel like those events are not the time for me to interact with them. What I might do is I may follow up with them after the fact, maybe almost a week after, and say, because usually their information is publicly available. So I don't need to talk to you in that room. I need to follow up with you after the fact and tell you that I found this interesting, I found that interesting, I'd love to ... And that's me trying to get in touch with that person and learn more. When I'm in a conference room, I'm really looking at who am I like speaking to right then and there. So if I'm seated at a table for dinner or lunch, I'm just going to speak to the person to the left of me, to the right of me, and probably all of the table. I'm going to look to meet the people I'm seated with. If I'm sitting at a conference and we're in like a row, I'm going to speak to the person to the left of me and to the right of me. And you really just never know where that goes. But the beauty of it is that you're making an authentic connection with someone that is genuinely in the same place for the same reason. And when I do that, I do take the card, but I take the card knowing that I'm going to follow up. Otherwise, I don't take the card. I just say, it's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you. And if we want to stay in contact, we do. But the reality is, if I'm taking the card, I feel like that's my moment to commit to following up. And that moment, I make an agreement with myself to be my best in maturing or developing this interaction. Even if it doesn't go beyond 1 or 2 conversations, the goal is to at least have some type of connectivity that brings us back to that moment. And why is that authentic? It's authentic for me because in that moment, we are in the same place. And I know that any relationship takes time and work. So you might have an instant connection there, but it does take time to get to know people. And not saying that we're building up this, long romantic meeting of like, we're going to meet every time, but there's a high probability that we will return to this conference again, that we are in the same sphere, and that I might have resources that person would benefit from, because we're in the same room and we have overlapping interests. And so in being authentic, it's also the opportunity for me to share information that I have. So when I meet that person, I've learned at least 3 things. And if I go elsewhere, I can say, oh, I know of this event coming up. I'm just going to forward it and share it and say, hey, this might be of interest to you because I know that you're interested in ... And that's a good way to start building a rapport with people. I love to play golf, and I know I've shared that with you. I think that's where I have probably developed the strongest and most powerful relationships, because you're spending an extended amount of time. And you don't talk about the weather because we're all experiencing the same weather together at the same time. And you're looking to have more introspective conversations just because you're spending that much time with someone. And you're not talking about work, and you're not talking about the deal that you're working on. Or maybe you are, if that is a person that you've already developed that type of conversation, or that's the intent of your interaction.
So I love that you brought the golf back up, because I want to spend a little bit of time on this. Women often don't get invited to some of these strategic places where conversations happen outside of the normal workspace. And often it's that informal activity where the real connection or the real deal can happen. So how do you, in talking about networking and in talking about golf, because it is a passion and it's a part of your business as well. So how do you equip women to leverage that, to learn, to know how to use those conversations? And I don't mean use as in inauthentically, but how to harness them in a way that's powerful for their career and for the work that they're trying to accomplish.
That, that's an excellent question. I think the word use, it's debatable because technically you are using it. It is a tool. It'll become part of your vocabulary. And what you want to be able to do is leverage the fact that people may not know that you're interested or know that you want to be included in those spaces. Leverage that for your benefit. And how does that work? It's if you know that your manager, your managing director, or the executive vice president, sorry, 1 second.
No worries.
I'm in a very public space right now, but it's like the brightest room possible.
No, it's beautiful. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and go on.
Okay. There is a moment. Well, 1 second. Sorry. Hi. We have lunchtime with the young lady that comes in. You want to say hello? You down there? I'm on a conference.
Hi.
Hi. She's like, no, I don't.
This is
Yeah. Okay. So with
you're talking about your maybe having a manager or a director that
yes.
plays. I think that's where you were at.
Okay, so in the event you work in a corporate environment where your managing director plays, or that other people are actually using golf as a tool to entertain clients or to entertain vendors, people don't know that you're interested. So this is where being authentic is important. And I think sometimes as women, we're afraid to share what we don't know or what we're still learning. And in those moments, it could be a conversation as simple as, hey, Bob, I know that, you guys are going out. I've just started taking lessons and love to go out with you. I'm an excellent putter. Like there are things that you can start to master without being a masterful golfer. Like people think they need to have the whole kit and caboodle, and that's not the reality. The reality is you just need to have the lingo, be able to understand the rules and understand the etiquette so that you're not disrupting their game. And in a truly an inclusive environment, they would welcome your presence on the course. And so that's a very telling moment. If you know for certain that Bob plays and you approach Bob and say, Bob, I'd love to go out with you. I've been really masterful at putting. I'm excellent in a scramble. We'll have a great time. That's you being authentic. That's you stating, I want to be included in this moment. And where Bob had historically been able to count you out and say, oh, she doesn't play, she's not interested. Now there's no question as to what your interest is. And when you think about what can we do to prepare separately, there are a lot of ways that women can be ready for the moment when they do get the invitation. Aside from taking lessons, it's also being able to work with consultants like myself that really think about golf from the business perspective. So where the biggest challenge is with a golf professional, they can teach you the game of golf, but if they've not worked in a corporate environment, they really don't know what you're navigating and how you're going to have to be very intentional about getting onto the course.
Now she wants to say hi to us.
Yes.
I'd like to ready to get on the recording because it's a lot of fun. Isn't that real life? This is real life.
This is real life. She's ready to get on the course. That's why she was saying hi. She's like, yes, I agree. That's how we get on.
It's like the little girl in the Peloton commercial who tells her dad, you didn't get up this morning to be mediocre. That's like my favorite commercial.
It is so adorable. Yes. As a Peloton, their marketing plan, like that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a different conversation, but just the fact that they get it. So I only recently took up golf. My husband, everyone in the family played. And I knew back in the day, earlier on in my career, that had I known golf or, got out and learned how to do this, there were places that I might have had better access to. So one of the things that I would encourage viewers, if you find even the concept intimidating, go take some lessons. Your local course, And sometimes it's even an unaffiliated organization that's not on a course, but they have a driving range and they can teach, some fundamentals, some how to play. You need the etiquette, you need all of those pieces. I love, LJ, what you're doing, because you're giving the bigger package of that. But if someone didn't have access to you, I still would encourage them, especially in the corporate environment, to go and try it. Maybe it's not your thing, but you should go find out if it's your thing, or if at least you can learn enough to harness that for your corporate experience and for your career, because it is a space where typically men, but more and more women are now finding the opportunity to grow, and use these types of events for collaboration and networking strategically. So before we close out, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think would be really important for our viewers to hear?
Absolutely. So in networking and in golf and in any of these spaces as women, we have to be very mindful that there is a stigma or a fear of the Me Too movement, and that men are maybe a little resistant to connecting with you because there's a fear or uncertainty around what this, I mean, it's almost as crazy as like the coronavirus. Like, people have been interacting, and probably you look at the back of like Lysol, it's been there forever. Like, if you look at the back of a Lysol container,
Yes.
it says that it fights the coronavirus. It says that. When we look at Me Too and we think about all of these different scenarios that are becoming more prevalent, there are women that have been getting hurt for many, many years and been in these very toxic environments. And we have to continue to push through. So continue to network and continue to know that you're being intentional. And if someone does give you a creepy vibe or you feel uncomfortable, pay attention to your gut and do not interact with that person as much, because, or make it a more public interaction, bring other people along. Like, do what's necessary to protect yourself and be safe. And as like when we're thinking about golf, it's the same thing. There are men that may not be comfortable going out with a single woman. And I think that a single woman, not meaning like she's single, not married, but single, like an individual woman, but making sure that you maintain a level of professionalism that doesn't blur the lines. And so that men that are in that space can know that it's comfortable to go out with you because you're maintaining the level of comfort for yourself and professionalism. And I think that it's a challenge. Like, even when I go out to play golf, there are men that just want to be men, whatever that means. But you have to be mindful that we are in charge of a lot of our space, and we are responsible for our space, and no one can do anything to us that we don't allow. And if we're concerned about the safety, or, it's easier said if it's your manager or your senior manager and you're trying to respond to that, but also being very intentional and deliberate with your conversations, I think that can be helpful. But it is an uncharted territory. And with golf, we want to be part of environments where men have historically not been held accountable for their behavior in those spaces. It's been a boys' club. And now when you enter into that space, the woman may be not welcome. That. And so be prepared for that. But then also, I think, going back to my original conversation, that doesn't matter. Be invited. You want to be invited. You want to be included. And so even if that is the environment, you probably already knew you were working in that kind of environment. Yes. And in those moments, it's still saying, I want to be included in these meetings and these conversations. I'm taking lessons. I'm an excellent putter. I, start putting things that are golf related in your space. Like, bring your clubs to work, or bring your glove, or bring the magazine, or bring all of the things, the USGA manual that you're starting to read, because you're probably going to know the rules better than any man in the office by the end, because we as women are like we study everything, and we're very academic sometimes about everything. We need to be very perfect and professional and know everything of that before we even start something. So I'm going to have like a PhD in golf before I even get out onto the course.
That's it.
But if you don't have my consulting services are always available. I can always reach out to people. If you need this type of consulting, I am always available. There are women's networks, like the LPGA Amateurs, there's usually chapters. They help women get into the game. Very good community. Find other women that are interested and build your own tribe of women that can grow in the game with you, so that you get that comfort level with peers and friends, so that when it's time to use it for work, that you already have a sense of confidence around the game and being able to talk to people and network. But networking is all about smiling and showing up.
That's right. That's right. So if someone has been inspired by hearing you and they'd like to get in touch with you, I do have your website. Your About PDF is something that they can download right off the screen where they're viewing this today. Is there anything else that you would like them to have specifically or know about on how to get in touch with you?
Sure, I am on social media. I am on Instagram. So my Instagram is MSLADYLOVES golf. Ms. Lady Loves Golf.
Okay.
And I'm on LinkedIn. So connect with me on LinkedIn. My information is available. And yeah, just reach out. I'm available.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this Life Reinvention Summit. I think the information that the group of ladies who've come together is just incredible. And I really appreciate that you've taken the time to share some of your expertise with the individuals who'll be viewing this session. So have an awesome day.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching, and go forth and do great things.